Everybody. You are watching Simply SCAdian, no title required. And I am so excited because this is the fourth season of this show. Like when we had this crazy idea, me and Lucas, who would have dreamed that we lasted 3 years and are starting our fourth year of this show? I'm going to do my geek girl stuff and let Lucas take it away.
Welcome, everybody, to season 4 of Simply SCAdian, no title required. We thank you so much for those of you that have been following the show. I want to throw a personal shout out to a gentleman whose name I did not get, but I got recognized in The Beast and the Boar. I did. Somebody went, "You're that guy from Simply SCAdian." And I was like, I am. So if you're still watching the show, sir, thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who's been watching and supporting the show. It's really important to us. The mission statement being, we really want to get out there that, again, we love our peers. We love our people who have achieved levels in the SCA, but we want to show some love to those people who are working maybe towards their peerage, or maybe they're not. Maybe they're just really knowledgeable in their subject and happy where they are, and just really like providing quality information, quality stuff for the SCA. So whether you are in arts and sciences, whether you're a storyteller, whether you're a fighter, whether we've had metalsmiths, we've had vinters, we've had brewers, we've had lots of different people on the show, and we thank you so much for being a part of the SCA and doing that for us. Now, we're going to our fourth season, so we really need guests. There's lots of you out there, so please hit up the Facebook page. Please fill out the form. If you think you're a candidate for that, great. More importantly, if you think you know somebody that we should be talking to, turn us on to them. Let us come find them. We love the people that we have met. I mean, we love the people we know that we bring on the show, but it's been so interesting to kind of meet people from all over the known world that are really just working hard at whatever their passion project is. And that is no exception tonight. I'd like to introduce to you to the show the Honorable Lady Lynne Fairchild, also known as Linnea. She's apprenticed to Master Edward Holliday, also known as Doc. And her main focus of study is blackwork embroidery. So we're going to talk a lot about that tonight, everybody. And also enjoys many other arts, including baking and dancing. Joined the SCA when she was 16, originally from the Baron of Flaming Griffin, but has resided in the Barony of Phoenix for the last 6 years. Has been on the RUM staff for 5 years, including Dean of Youth Education. Also a former South Oaken chronicler, former North Oaken chronicler, former South Oaken Minister of Youth, and mundanely an executive. And this is something I just learned. An assistant at say the name again. I'm going to say it wrong. Glears Meats. Yes, happily married, mother of 4, very active. 2 of whom also participate in the Page School for the last 7 years, and has her own YouTube channel, primarily focused on the SCA related topics, with over 3,400 subscribers. And we will definitely make sure we provide a link to that when we put up the recording. Welcome to the show, Lynne.
Thanks for having me.
So let's start out with our usual question. How did you find the SCA?
Well, in high school, I was working at Bob Evans. So I'm in high school. I worked Friday nights, Saturday nights, and Sunday mornings. And Friday night, one night, my manager came up and told me in the next 5 minutes, if no one else walks in the door, I could leave. Next thing I know, a group of 14 come walking in. I have homework to do, but they're all dressed funny. And so I start asking questions, the typical, are you at a play? And so then they gave me some information. And the following week was their on, I believe it was Friday, it was their monthly meeting. And so I went to that meeting because I found someone to cover for me. And that was the Canton of Hawks K and the Barony of Flaming Griffin. And then found out that they were hosting Push for Pensick, which is an event held in the Barony of Flaming Griffin. And that was the following week. And so I took more time off from work and I went to Push for Pensick as a 16-year-old, not knowing other than the handful of people that I had met at Bob Evans, did not know anyone else. And I showed up and they gave me garb, which that was interesting too. The garb was probably about $3 to $4 many sizes too big, and so everything was held together by a belt. But I remember like that morning there was coursing of the hounds. I got to watch fencing, and I was thrown into here, try thrown weapons. And so I got to meet a lot of people in one day, and it was a lot of fun. And pretty much from there, I jumped in with both feet.
That's one. What a great story. I mean, when we hear people talk about their first experiences, it sounds like that was super positive. That's a wonderful group of people to meet like that. So you go to these first kind of things. Did you have an interest like in a particular period prior to that, or was it just like I kind of like this stuff and whatnot, or were you like I was completely drawn to like Elizabethan or 12th century or whatever it was, or did you kind of learn what you liked by joining?
Well, I'd always loved history, and I remember when Ohio had their like first Renaissance festival, and I remember advertisements and like getting like super excited and more or less convincing, if not dragging my parents to the Renaissance festival. And so then from that point on, I love the 16th century. And then when I found saw these people at Bob Evans dressed funny, and then I got to talking with them and found out like 600 to 1600, like, oh, you mean I can wear a corset or a bodice and a hoop skirt? And just I got a little excited.
Awesome.
What was the first? It's my turn. So, what was the first art that you discovered that you liked?
Actually, it was probably black work, because at Harvest Day that same year, so I Push for Penzic it used to be, well, it's held right about July, so it was right before Penzic, so hence the name Push for Penzic. And so Harvest Day is held usually the second weekend in September. And one of my new friends, his name is Lord Gregor Ricardus, he taught a class on blackwork embroidery. And when I took the class, when I took it, because I had done cross stitch for years, and how I outlined anything in my cross stitch, I found out that it was the same technique for the geometric reversible blackwork that he taught. So you would go in, out, in, out, and out, and then finish your journey, and then go back for a second journey and fill in all of those spaces. And so then it's a reversible line on the front and the back.
Right. So then let's deep dive into that real quick. So let's explain to our audience, because I mean, I already know what blackwork is. I'm very knowledgeable. But let's say if I didn't know, how would you explain blackwork to somebody who has no idea what that is?
Well, for example, blackwork embroidery is described by Chaucer in it's the Tale of the Miller's Wife. Alison, I believe, is her name. And he talks about black embroidery alike both within and without. And he talks about being on a white background. And so blackwork embroidery, just the name blackwork, it just means it's black embroidery, usually on a white background. But with that, just by saying blackwork, there are different types of blackwork. You have the earlier like reversible geometric type, which is also known as Holbein stitch or double running stitch. But then from roughly about 1540 on through 1600 in England, you get the more swirly floral type, which has stem stitch, seed stitch, a lot of other things besides double running stitch.
So, how big is reversible? Like, I know I don't embroider. I did needlework at one point, but people I know who talk about embroidery always talk about, oh my God, it's reversible, and oh wow, ooh. Like, what is the big deal about it being reversible?
I think it's just because of how neat your embroidery has to be for it to be reversible. Because normally, like if say I'm doing cross stitch, for example, on the front, you see all of the X's, but on the back side, it could be I've got lines going this way and that way, and it just does not look pretty on the back side. Or you've got tails woven in, and it just doesn't look pretty. For it to be reversible, and we know from some of the Hans Holbein the Younger portraits where he'll have cuffs, or you'll see a collar, but especially the cuffs, you'll see blackwork on both sides of the cuff. And it's the same pattern on both sides, so it's reversible. And I think it's a neat type of embroidery.
Sure.
Now, when you're doing it, like when you personally are doing it, are you doing it to garb, like on hems and cuffs and collars and things like that, or do you primarily do it on like almost like in a vacuum, like on a handkerchief or on some kind of wall art or whatnot? What are you doing with it?
I usually first start off, if I can do it, I'll put it on my slate frame, which is a simple frame, not a scroll frame, but a slate can be a square or rectangle, and then I'll put my embroidery on that, and then I will cut it out depending on what I'm doing. If say I'm doing cuffs, then it will be a very long pattern, and then I'll cut that out and then hem it and then attach it to the shirt. It's a lot easier to embroider it when it's flat before you do any pleating. But with that, I've done embroidery on cuffs, on collars. I put some on the collar of a partlet. I have also embroidered a coif. I embroidered a caul,
Oh.
more cuffs.
Go ahead, Lucas. I interrupted you. You had a question, so
No, no, I was waiting for you. So then did that lead for you as somebody was new and then kind of discovered that? Did that lead to you? Do you make your own garb too along with it? Did you kind of delve into that as well, or do you just kind of augment other people's work?
I first learned how to sew when I was in second grade. My mom taught me, and so like in high school, one of my gifts for graduating high school was a sewing machine. And so I make garb for myself and my husband and our 4 children.
Speaking of, how did you meet? Because I know that he's also in the SCA. How did you two meet?
We met at a demo. Actually, the demo was at, I believe it was called Pandora Con. It was a con. So in the room we were in, there was what do you call it? A TARDIS. A TARDIS was in the corner where we were fighting, and lots of people dressed for a convention, and we were the minority.
And was
It's
it
what does he do in the SCA? Is he a fighter? Is he A&S? Like, does he have a passion or?
A little bit of everything. He is
Okay.
technically an authorized heavy fighter, but he primarily does fencing or rapier. But he's also a blacksmith. So yeah, he keeps busy.
So I want to dive more into black work because the only thing I've ever known about black work has been Queen Elizabeth, right? We all talk about Elizabethan, but now you just told us that there's mention of it in Chaucer. Is that as far back as research has gone for you with it, is to Chaucer's time?
Actually, back in, I think it was yes, it was 2020, because in February of 2020, I did a pentathlon at the South Oakland Regional right before the pandemic started.
Okay, all right, wait, you got to explain what a pentathlon is.
Okay, pentathlon, it was within the arts and sciences, and pentathlon, penta meaning 5. So I did 5 different projects all at this arts and sciences competition. So for that one, I did jumbles, which that was a recipe from 1597. It's an aniseed pretzel. I had made glass beads for a Viking outfit. I also had hand stitched a whole Viking ensemble for my daughter, which then by the time we could finally go back to events, she grew out of.
Yeah.
But one of my projects in the pentathlon was a research project, which led me down the road, because to me, well, black work had to come from somewhere. It didn't just randomly appear one day. And that's how I found myself going down a rabbit hole. And next thing I knew, I was looking at Mamluk embroidery, which is Egyptian from about the 10th to the 14th century.
Wow.
And that's where it started.
That's what it looks like, because when you look at the Mamluk embroidery, it looks very similar to early black work. It's silk thread on linen. They may have also used other materials for the thread or the fabric, but the patterns are still the same. They're still geometric. And then you find these same patterns, like, for example, in Spain, you had the Moorish occupation in Spain, and a lot of historians like to credit Catherine of Aragon, who is the first wife of Henry VIII, of introducing black work to England. but since Chaucer was already describing black work and he was around 100 years before she was, I think Catherine just made it popular because if anything, she brought maybe more patterns or wore a lot of it coming from Spain.
So have you dived into other kinds of embroidery, or is black work the only embroidery you do?
Well, to say black work, I specifically do the double running stitch, which is the reversible stitch. But lately I've been diving more into the swirly floral type of black work, just to more or less understand how specifically in England they went from the geometric to the swirly floral, because you went from having this reversible stitch to all of a sudden not having really a reversible stitch, depending on if they were doing the stem stitch or a chain stitch or a seed stitch. So more or less just learning the different embroidery techniques that were used later on.
Have any samples with you?
No, but I could always run and go grab them real quick.
Well, we can also, you have a blog. Well, you have a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let's dive into that, Lucas. What do you think?
So as far as your YouTube channel, first of all, say it what it is, where they can find it, and then kind of why you started even filming.
Well, my YouTube channel is my name, Lynne Fairchild. I originally started it back in, well, I started putting videos up, I think it was like 2017, 2018. And I started it for a couple of reasons. One, I wasn't, well, because in 2018 we have one of our kids, and so I wasn't able to get to many events. And well, I still, I'm apprenticed to a laurel. One day it would be nice to be a laurel. And so if I'm trying to see and be seen and get out of my area, well, and I wasn't physically able to go to a lot of events. So then that's where I was like, well, maybe I could put some stuff out there and show people what I can do or what I know. And it also was a chance for me to get more comfortable being in front of a camera, because especially if you look at the earlier videos, I was not nearly as comfortable as I am now talking in front of people live on a camera, on the computer. And so that got me, where I started practicing, doing more videos. And then the pandemic happened. And then this became more or less my lifeline, because we couldn't go to events. And this was a way that I could be creative. And it was my creative outlet because I was stuck in the house with 4 kids. I needed to have some adult conversations with people rather than just arguing about sharing toys and give that toy back. And so I was able to not only just create videos, but also I could learn more on how to fine tune the craft of editing videos. And I just got more and more excited about everything. And then even afterwards, now where, yes, we can go back to events and everything, but I still enjoy making the videos, or what's the latest rabbit hole I've been going down, and getting excited and sharing what I've learned or what I'm doing. And
now the format of your YouTube channel, is it basically kind of like a video diary, like we're following you as you make new projects, or do you do tutorials, or is it a combination of both?
it's a little bit of everything. Sometimes I just simply, if I'm at Crown Tourney, here, I have done recordings. You can, if you weren't physically there and you want to see the semifinals or the finals, I've got the videos there. I have tutorials if you want to learn how to do black work or the history of black work, I've got that there. But I've also followed my husband into the shop before, and I've recorded him doing blacksmithing or coin making, or just some of the things that he does.
Wow.
And you're up to 3,400 subscribers, which is pretty impressive for, us SCAdians being so niche. How many of your followers are not SCAdians, though? I'm curious about that. What's the breakdown?
That I don't know. The analytics on YouTube, if it offers me that, I haven't seen
I think
it.
it does, but I'm just curious. So
I mean, I know there are some that are SCAdians that follow me because, well, at Penzic, there were a couple of times, for example, on Sunday of War Week, I was doing the Known World Arts and Sciences display, and at one point they were threatening, like, okay, in 30 minutes there's a big storm coming in, and I knew like our tent was, everything was opened up, and so I like looked at my husband real quick, like, watch my stuff, and I ran to camp to close everything up, and as I'm running back, I hear Lynne Fairchild, and it's like, and it's some random person. They're like, I subscribe to your channel, and I'm like, that was me. Great. Yeah.
So you have entered ANS competitions, and then you've also entered the Tournament of the Arts, which is a new thing in the newer thing in the mid realm, where the Laurels, we have the Chivalry hosts tournaments of chivalry. So all the fighters can come and have a chance to fight one-on-one with the members of the Chivalry. There's a tournament of defense. So the Masters of Defense do the same thing. They have one where you can fight, and there's no scoring, there's no winners, there's no losers. It's just a chance to grow as a fighter or fencer. And so the Laurels created, Countess Serena created this Tournament of the Arts where artisans can sit down and have Laurels come work with them, talk to them. You can either do an hour, or we have like a fast 15-minute, I think is the time limit.
10-minute speed round, and you get 5 on your dance card.
So it's really cool. So what are I'm not going to ask you to say which is your favorite, but having done competitions and populist things and the ANS at Penzic, what's the drawbacks and positives to all of those, to each one?
Well, I guess I'll start with Penzic. If you are wanting to meet a whole lot of people and just geek out about your craft, that's a great place, because as it was, we set up about, it was like between 11 and 11:30 was set up, and then they told us we had a break for lunch and that it would officially start at 1. No, at 11:30, I already had people walking by and they were asking me questions. Next thing I knew, it was about 4:15, 4:30, and that's when they were telling us about the incoming storm. And because I like also looked at my husband like, we haven't had lunch yet.
Wow.
No wonder I'm hungry. So on one hand, there are a lot of people to talk with, so that's kind of good and bad. You get to talk to a lot of people. At the same time, if you want a chance to sit down to eat, to rest, relax, that may not be the best place for that. As far as doing the Tournament of Arts, it was definitely a more relaxed atmosphere. And I liked that I could sit down and just like be able to hyper focus with one laurel for an hour. And then there was a little break and then another laurel. And so, for example, at the Tournament of Arts, there were not many laurels there that did late period anything. But that was also a chance for me to talk with laurels who maybe did earlier period or just, well, different periods than what I do. And so if they didn't know anything, for example, my first laurel, he's a gaming laurel, and I've known him since my teenage years. But as it was, after we were done talking for an hour, he's like, I think this is the longest you and I've ever spoken. Because most times we're like, our paths are crossing like, hey, hi, and then like I'm off to a class, he's off to go marshal or something. So we never really had a chance to just sit down and talk seriously for an hour.
We have ANS competitions.
The arts and sciences competitions, the difference, if you are looking for people to maybe, this might not sound quite right, nitpick your item, because I'm actually a person where if you just pay me compliments, I'm the kind of person, I'm going to brush it off. My husband's been working with me on like, if someone tells me like, oh, your outfit's pretty, he's been working with me on just smile and take the compliment, because I'm the person that I know every single thing wrong with the outfit. How can you think my outfit is pretty when there are all these things wrong with it? So that's where I think having the competition is, it's good, because then if you're looking for that criticism, if you're looking for that feedback on how to better do your project next time, if you're looking for something to help you grow, then I think the competition is better for that.
Right. And the way the mid-realm does arts and science competitions is it's a face-to-face judging. So you have an hour is set aside, a whole hour is set aside for the entrant and the three judges to talk to them about everything. Like there's a demo of what it is, and then they
Mhm.
ask questions and learn, which it's not that's not how it used to be. And it's so much better now that we do it that way because it really you have to take the documentation that they verbally give you as well as the documentation that's written out. So it's
And
pretty
even to say 1 hour, that it's usually about the first 15 to 20 minutes is the demonstration or the explanation. And then after that, it's the judges usually filling out the paperwork and then asking questions as they're going through the different criteria on the judging score sheet.
So you said a couple times you mentioned that it's difficult to find laurels who are doing the later period. Is there a reason for that? I mean, do you think that people don't focus on, kind of mid tutor and beyond for any reason, or do you just find it that it's a newer thing that people are into?
That specifically, I think it was more the event. It
Okay.
was war games, and there just weren't that many laurels that attended that do later period.
Hmm. Okay.
yeah.
So you have the YouTube channel. You've competed in all these things. Obviously you've worked with Rum. Can you talk a little
But we
bit?
got to talk about what rum is
Well,
first.
yeah, yeah. So first, what is Rum, and then what has been your involvement with it? And do you teach your embroidery now live?
RUM is the Royal University of the Mid-Realm. And with RUM, I first started off as being a dean of youth education. And then now I'm just general staff on RUM or for RUM. While I was the dean of youth education, and shortly afterwards, then we had the pandemic. And so I became one of the moderators for RUM. Royal University of the Mid-Realm has its own YouTube channel. And especially when the pandemic first started, we had classes on Mondays, on Tuesdays, on Wednesdays, on Thursdays. And so there was like a class scheduled every night of the week. So one person had Mondays, one person had Tuesdays. And so I
Hmm.
believe it was Tuesdays, I was the moderator for that. And so then you would just log in, give the little spiel, and then go live on both, on Facebook, and plus let everyone know that it was being recorded and anyone could join the class if they wanted to. And yes, for RUM, I did teach black work. I also did Pensick University when that was virtual. I did a black work class there as well. And then for the RUM that's coming up, it's November 18th. It's in Illinois. And I'm going to be teaching a class there where it's a critical look at the Hans Holbein the Younger's portraits, specifically looking at the black work in his portraits, because the black work I do is known as, well, it's double running stitch, or it's also known as Holbein stitch. And so that's where I kind of look, why is it called Holbein stitch? And so then I think I'm up to like 28 different portraits where he has black work in the portrait. And some of them are miniatures that are only like 5 centimeters in diameter. But his detail work is so intricate that you can still see what the pattern is on the collar and then recreate the pattern.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
cool.
So then let's dive into your youth experiences. You've done a lot with youth. Is that a result of your own children being part of it, or did you kind of get involved with that prior?
No, yeah, it was because my children were first involved, as it was how I first got involved in anything youth related. First, a little background. I had made my son a shirt, and I put black work embroidery on the cuffs, and he got super excited and referred to it as his pirate shirt. He was 6 years old. He was super excited about his pirate shirt. And we went to Coronation. And as we were walking by, he saw youth fighting, and then more or less, like pull on my sleeve, like, mommy, mommy. Fine. My friend happened to be running the youth combat, and so he was able to authorize him. And next thing I know, he entered his first tournament, and he won his first tournament, all while wearing the black work embroidered shirt. And he proceeded to wear that same shirt like all summer long, doing youth combat fighting. And so then from there, he started to do other things. And soon I found out about Page School. And do I need to explain what Page School is?
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
I don't know exactly how to. Um, for Page School, that's for kids. Originally it was, I think, from like age 5 or 6 up through until they become an adult at 18. And it used to be where you had junior, and then you had senior, and then you had a graduate level. And then for every 8 hours of any kind of fighting, you got credit for that, and then 8 hours for arts and sciences and 8 hours for service. And then after that, then you became a junior page, and then the same thing, 8 hours, for each of the 3, and then you became a senior page. And that was supposed to help kids get more involved in the SCA, or help them, I think, make them feel more like they were contributing something, or they were being part of something. And I have a sneaking suspicion that my children, specifically my daughter, helped with the Page School being modified, because with my son, he's the oldest, and then we have our daughter, who is 4 years younger. And whatever our son does, our daughter has to do it better, faster, whatever. She has to always try to one up her brother. So she was, I think, 4 when he joined Page School. She was under the age of Page School, but she was so excited. She wanted to be part of it. So I had contacted the person who was in charge of Page School right then. Like, is this a very hard line, or is it possible that she could join too? Because she, whatever her brother did, she wanted to do. And they were like, if she really wants to do it, then by all means, let her join. So I filled out stuff. She got to join. And then I forget the exact timeline, but I think she had completed her junior hours in less than 6 months.
Wow.
She was a senior page before she was technically supposed to join Page School. And so then right about that same time, Page School had been modified, where they then got a purple belt. And then for every 8 hours they do of service, or 8 hours they get, for every 8 hours of one of the 3 criteria or areas, the arts and sciences, martial arts, or the service, they get a coin, and then they can sew that coin onto their belt. And so as it is, both my son and daughter have coins. I think they're up to 13 or 14 coins on their page belt.
Wow. So, and then from there, you kind of like took the reins on, maybe not Page School, but like on running youth services in your barony then?
Well, from there, I remember looking at when I became the regional South Oakland for youth. It was one of those, I happened to be on the job site and saw that one was needed, and like, well, I could do that. And so I applied, and that's how I became that. And then it was the same thing for the dean for youth education for RUM, where someone had posted something on Facebook, and I looked at the criteria, like, I could do that. And so I applied, and I became the dean.
Nice. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I was really active with the youth myself when my kids were younger, but then they've grown out of it, and I haven't thought about it. Although I did see a request for teachers for youth classes at RUM in November. I just don't know if I can go. I have to look at the calendar, but it's there's certain people who just seem to like thrive in the youth scene, and others of us who tend to, I'm not going to loop you in with that, but who sort of like, well, my kids, I do my time because I have my kids, and once they're older, I don't have to do it anymore. I was just making a comment, sorry.
With that, I was kind of that way before having kids, where like, before having kids, I just didn't have the patience for kids. And now having had kids, especially when teaching other kids, it's great because you can either have fun with them, or if there's one that maybe tries your patience, after your class is done, they can go back.
I give you back.
Yeah, there isn't much where I am for youth. I have 3 children myself. They're 18, almost 18, 15, and 11. And my daughter, she's a 15-year-old. She is 100% bought into the SCA, regardless of the fact that there's not much of, she's attended their excellencies at at events and so, because she just gets herself in there and whatnot. But the other two, the boys, they're not really fighters. So that's really the only thing there is youth fighting. And they're both, even at separate ages, they're like, meh,
You've got to bring them out to the mid realm for it takes a child to raise a village. What is it? It takes a child to raise a village, RAZE. But there's also Royal University of the Mid Realm has a youth track that's got some really impressive classes.
Well, Jacob will be 18 by the time we have the next Black Griffin in. He has already told me he is going to compete against me for Bardic champion. So there's that. He made a monster, so.
His son played Romeo in the Known World Players, Romeo and Juliet, and he was amazing. He was just flat out amazing. And we had a really great note from somebody who saw it that their daughter, I can't remember the age of the daughter, but she was young, like maybe 11 or 12, and she was like, there were kids in the play, and it was like, we don't just have to fight, we can do theater too in the end. But there is children's theater at Pensick, and children's commedia and children's choir. There's lots of stuff for kids at Pensick, at least.
Yeah.
All right, so
There's
you
also archery and thrown weapons.
Yep. Well, and that was I was going to ask you, because you said you did thrown weapons at your very first event, and then the picture you sent us, your headshot, has you in front of a thrown weapons target. So is that still something that you actively pursue, and does your family pursue it with you?
That particular headshot, that was done I think it was at a crown tourney, and actually my daughter, well, both of our kids, they like to do thrown weapons and archery, but especially my daughter, she was the one who dragged me out there, because with my husband being a blacksmith, one of the things he's made are hurl bats. And so we had some, and we brought them out to the range, but then they wound up being too heavy for her to throw. So they had some extras that were lighter that she could throw, some knives and stuff. And then with that headshot, it was, well, my husband's hurl bat that had actually hit the target. And then I was super excited, and then my picture was taken. They hit the target.
What's a hurl bat?
A hurl bat, more or less, think of it looks sort of like an axe, but it has points on the top, the backside, and the bottom. So as it's rotating, it could be the bottom that hits, it could be the top part that hits. It pretty much has points on, all four sides, so it can stick on the target regardless of, because most times if you're throwing a knife, if you hit it with like the butt end, well, great, you might have to take a half a step back or half a step forward. With the hurl bat, regardless of how you throw it, at some point, some part of it's probably going to stick. And my husband could go down that rabbit hole. Hurl bats were actually how he became the Kingdom A&S champion for Duke Kellick and Duchess Buchanan during their first reign, is he had made hurl bats.
So I didn't let you answer the question, though. So do you still do thrown weapons? Is that still something that you're passionate about?
I do it for fun. I would not say I'm passionate about it, just because when your kids can hit the target more often than you do.
It hurts. I'm really out of shape, though, because when I get to the field, I have so much fun throwing. And then by the end of the day, I'm like, oh, my shoulder, I killed myself. It's horrible. It's so fun, though. It's very fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I enjoy it.
So baking is the other thing that you mentioned in your bio, and you talked about you had made for the pentathlon jumbles.
Yes.
So let's first find out what jumbles are. What are jumbles?
I describe them as an aniseed pretzel.
Right.
Because when baking is just one of many things I love doing. I enjoy dancing, and I've been doing that for years, but baking's been one that I've been doing since childhood. And well, at first I started kind of dabbling with recipes, and I came across one recipe, but I think it was from, I want to say it was like 1653. It was something out of the SCA time period. And so pretty much I was told, like, well, you could enter that, but you're going to get dinged because of the 1600 cutoff. And so then I started going backwards through recipe books, determined to find something. And then that's where I got super excited when I found a recipe for jumbles for 100 written in 1597, because 1597 is technically within the 16th century time frame. And so then that's where I started playing around with trying to figure out the ratio for the aniseed and the flour and everything. But then when I started baking it, I was running into a problem where, because I'm used to, you make the dough, if it's a cookie or something, you roll it out, flatten it, however you do the cookie, put it in the oven, and then you pull it out and then it's done. But when I was doing that, because the recipe said to put it in water and then, well, let me go back. First, I didn't read the whole recipe correctly the first time. So I was first making the dough and putting it in the oven, and then it was just kind of coming out kind of sloppy. And so then I was told like it was treat it like a pretzel, because when reading, because my Laurel is a cooking Laurel. And so he was the one who told me to read the recipe. It mentions water. Cook it in water first like a pretzel. Well, I had never made pretzels before, so I didn't know to do that. So then I did that. But then there was one particular word that I, for whatever reason, didn't understand, and it's the word sieve. It's supposed to be boiling water.
Oh,
and
like
I
yeah.
had lukewarm water, and so it was still, because it said to put it in seething water and then let it cool off, like take it out and then let it cool off before you bake it, and it was still coming out this kind of goopy mess. So as it was, I ended up saving all of my mishaps and I froze them. So for the South Oaken A&S, I had like the different mishaps labeled, and what, like, this is where I learned about putting in water. This is where I learned about boiling the water. And then this is finally my finished product.
So what is the shape of them? Because you say pretzel, and of course you automatically think of what's the shape?
Just however you want it, because when you make the dough, you roll it out and then you can make it however you want to do. I like to just do pretzels, but you can do any kind of knotted work.
I think I tried them. I seem to remember trying them at some A&S competition, but I could be wrong. So what else have you made? What else have you baked or cooked?
Well, I would not say cooked. My husband, he does mundanely more of the cooking. I like to do the baking. I don't like to deal much with meat. But
For a meat. All right, we won't tell your boss.
I am happy with, here is cow, here is steak. I don't want to know how cow became steak. Just
I hear you. Yeah.
ignorance bliss. That's why I handle all of like office stuff. I handle paperwork. I handle scheduling. I do not handle meat.
Yeah. So what else have you baked?
Well, another recipe I actually had at Penzic, and those are Prince biscuits. And with those, my husband likes to tell people if they like where they don't know exactly what's in it. It's like, do you like rye? Well, if you like rye, then you'll like this. And so with that, I make the dough and then I pour the dough into little molds. And so then I'll have like little flowers of different shapes.
Neat. And go ahead.
Hmm?
I didn't talk about the questions. Go ahead.
Okay. With your baking, do you stick mostly within that mid-Tudor period too, or have you gone further back?
I've tried going back, but I actually like the later period because they give more information rather than something that might just say eggs, flour, and spices.
Yeah.
Okay, what spices? How much flour? How many eggs? You know, like I need numbers. You know, at least in the late Tudor period, especially the Elizabethan period, you have where it will say half a bushel of this, half a pound of that, and it will actually give you more measurements, so you can then sit there and try to figure out what spices, how much flour.
Neat. All right, well, we're almost out of time. Lucas, did you have any more questions?
No, I mean, I was going to ask about your dancing too.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
How long have you been dancing? What do you do? Do you teach? You know, how do you function with that?
Dancing was something that was my second arts that I ever came across, and that was I was in in the Barony of Flaming Griffin. There used to be the College of St. Joan. It was at the University of Dayton. And so I was still in high school, but then I became friends with a lot of the college students because every Wednesday night they had dance practice. So I would drive an hour to go up to the dance practices, and that was so exciting, you know. So for like 3 hours every Wednesday night, I'm doing dances, I'm learning dances. Some were period, some were not period, but they were still a lot of fun.
Hmm.
And then that winter, that was when I found out about Magical Dinner at Wright State University, and they were needing dancers. And then that's because from that, that's how I got my first, how I made my first corset and my first hoop skirt, because they specifically focus on the years between like 1572 and about 1578, 79. It's the golden era of the Elizabethan period.
Mhm.
And so like one year would be 1572, and then the next year was 1573. And so then there would be different dances. There was also the Wright State Choir, and it was a dinner theater. So people would pay, and you had either your AA section, which was right in between the head stage and the dance stage, and then you had your sections A and your sections B. And so then they had different courses throughout the night. So you would have your first course, your second course, a third course, and then like a dessert course. And in between the courses, either the choir would be singing or we would be dancing, and a little bit of everything. And that was so exciting, so much fun. I did that for about 10 years. Since then, they've stopped doing Magical Dinner at Wright State. But in that early time period before kids, yes, I was a dance mistress, and I helped teach dancing, or I participated pretty much any event that had dancing. Chances are I was on the dance floor. And then I stepped away from the SCA for a little bit. And then when I came back and I started playing more with the Barony of Phoenix before I moved into the Barony of Phoenix. And the Baron at the time, he knew how much I loved dancing. And so he's like, "You'll be our dance mistress." And so I went to a couple of practices and tried teaching dance. It was a small space, so trying to have heavy fighting and fencing, and then we were up on the stage and there were only a couple people interested in dancing. So I
So
wish more people were interested in dancing.
one of your friends mentioned dragon tails, that's something that you've made. Somebody commented that. So what are dragon tails?
Dragon tails, those are, it's just meatballs and cheese, shredded cheese. And then, so you take frozen bread. I just get like frozen loaves from Kroger, and they're 5-pound rolls. And so you let them thaw, and then you stretch them out to about 3 feet wide and about 4 inches in diameter. And then you cut them in thirds. And then from there, I'll sprinkle cheese on it and put about 3 to 4 meatballs in there, and then wrap it up. And then you bake it per the instructions for the bread. So not really a period recipe, but it's been something that for other things I have done for lunch taverns. It was something we did for a lunch tavern years ago when the College of St. Joan still existed and held Kaylee every year. Kaylee is a spring event. And this year I did it for May Day in Phoenix.
Nice. All right, so we are almost out of time. It is time for the final question. Da, 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 da. What can the SCA do better?
The thing I think that the SCA could do better, and this is from my personal experience from when I was a teenager to now, and I would like to see more of the SCA out in the real world. And what I mean by that, when I first joined, I remember how I mentioned being part of the College of St. Joan. We were a bunch of college, well, they were a bunch of college kids and I was in high school, but we would do bowling and garb. I remember being parts of many different parades. There was in Kettering, Ohio, the Holiday at Home Parade. It was the Labor Day Parade. And all of the Barony of Flaming Griffin, but also like some would come up from Phoenix, and we would all be part of this parade. But then afterwards, there was a craft show. And at the very end of because where the parade route ended is where the craft show began. And so it was a full day thing. And so we had a demo set up there at the craft show. And so not only would the fighters be clinking and fighting and stuff, through the parade, but then people could come up to us afterwards and ask for information. And we were just more out there for people to either see us, find us, have more people want to join or at least ask questions. Maybe they're not interested, but their brother might be interested. Here, let me take a pamphlet. And at least for the area I live in, it just seems like there are fewer demos, fewer. It's been years since I've heard of a local group doing a parade. It would just be nice to get out there more in the public eye.
I agree.
Yeah.
Great input.
Yeah.
All right. We're good?
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, I would say, yeah. I mean, as a relative, as being relatively new to being officially in the SCI, I've been around for about 20 years, but I've only lately joined in the last 5. And yeah, I used to see friends of mine go and do those things, or I work a lot of Renaissance festivals, and some of the local ones would have, a representation from a barony. And yeah, I don't see that, nor am I ever asked to be a part of that anywhere. So yeah, getting the word out, networking, definitely agree with it.
Yeah, me too. We need more paradey things, more be in the public face. Where I live, we do a lot of demos, but we could do more.
And I would totally bowl in garb.
I would so go bowling in
You
garb.
said that, and I was like, oh yeah, 100%.
All right, we're out of time. We have been talking with Lynne Fairchild, and she is going to share her YouTube link. So you just go to YouTube and you type in LYNNE space Fairchild, and you will find her YouTube. Become a subscriber. It's great to support her. And next time, in 2 weeks, when we're back, we'll be talking with Solveig Bjarnardottir, there's no S in there, who was one of our guests for the Dependent show. And she's coming back to talk more about the excitement that is her life of music.
Right.
Thank you so much, Lynne. This has been really, really incredible to talk with you and learn. Thank you for teaching us so much today about
a lot of information. Thank you.
And black work. We've just really learned a lot, and it's been awesome.
And while you were talking, I looked up recipes for jumbles because I want to know what it looked like. So I was like,
I want to make some jumbles.
And I'm totally doing. It's the opposite in my family. I'm the baker and my wife's the cook. So I'm gonna give it a shot.
You're gonna make some jumbles. Yeah, I'm coming out this weekend, babe. All right, everybody. You've been watching Simply SCAdian, no title required, and we will see you in 2 weeks. Thanks, Lynne.
Thank you.